Alright, we've bounced around with text and formatting enough. Let's get to something a bit more visual. Putting images on your web page is fairly simple, and it's mostly handled by a single tag, but because images are not all created equally, as you have to think a lot about the resolution, width, and height and so forth, that's not going to play well with every screen size. The image tag is one of the more flexible tags because, like the meta tag, it has a lot of different attributes you can assign to it to help make the picture look its best, whether you want the image to display as full size or as a simple thumbnail that entices people to click on it. So let's start with the important part, which is putting your images in a place that you can find. You remember that folder I suggested you make with all your HTML files stored in it? I'd recommend placing another folder within that folder, named IMG. This is a pretty universal shorthand for a place to store images for a web page. While you can get away with putting images in the same folder as the HTML files itself, I wouldn't recommend that because it can get really messy real fast if you plan on putting a lot of images on your site. If you want them even more organized, you could make subfolders in that IMG folder, but so long as you have a decently easy to remember naming scheme for everything that you put in there, that shouldn't be an issue. The image tag is somewhat unique in that, like the meta and break tags, it doesn't have a closing tag. All the info you need is placed into the tag itself. After you start writing it out, the first and most important attribute, and technically the only attribute the tag actually needs, is the SRC or source attribute. Here, you just have to put the file path to the image you want to display. This is why the image needs to be in the same folder or in a subfolder with the HTML document. Otherwise, it can't really locate the images. So if it's in the same folder as the document, just write out the name of the image. If you went with the strategy I suggested and made that subfolder, then you put the name of the subfolder, / and then the name of the image. Always make sure that it's inside the quotation marks as well. Most attribute entries will need to be in the quotation marks. And that's it. The next time you load up your web page in a browser, you should see that image. However, if you didn't do anything to change said image, it's going to appear at full size. Now again, you have more flexibility if you do this with CSS, but for now, here's how to resize an image in HTML. In the same tag where the image is located, you can add a height and width attribute, the same way you did with the source attribute. Then, in the quotation marks, just type out the height and width in pixels that you want your image to be. You should probably make sure that you know the full height and width of the image before doing this so that you can easily estimate how to evenly change these values, as you can very easily stretch or contort the image if you're not careful. And lastly, there is the alt attribute. This one isn't necessary, but it is good practice to include this with every image. You ever notice how if you hover your cursor over some images or links, you sometimes get a small window pop-up that will describe the image to you in text? That's alt text, and it's pretty important for accessibility reasons. You don't have to put in a description of the image itself. You could put in a witty joke or a fun fact about the image, or something along those lines, but in general, it's best practice to include the alt attribute with every image that you put up. And hey, look at that, we're done with images. That wasn't too bad, and it's fairly easy to get to grips with. You got the makings of a nice little gallery right there, so long as you learn how to size everything properly. Next up, we're taking a look at links and comments. The first one being essential to actually getting around a web page, and the other is useful when actually building one. I couldn't think of another place to talk about commenting in HTML, so we're putting it with links. Deal with it. And until then, keep circulating the links, friends, and I'll see you all in the next video.